Hello friends, welcome to Web Application Security Testing demo session. Today we will be discussing about SQL injection vulnerability. In this tutorial, you will learn about what is SQL injection, what are the consequences of SQL injections, way to test for SQL injection, how to test for SQL injection vulnerability, how to remediate or how to fix SQL injection vulnerability. So let's start. So guys, before getting in detail about SQL injection vulnerability, let's try to understand what is SQL in two words. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. This is used to query the database, to retrieve some information from the database, to make changes to the database, to add, to edit, to update, to delete some kind of records. We use structured query language to interact with the database. So databases are nothing but they provide some backend functionality to the web applications. So they store some resources based on the application wants to how it wants to retrieve the information. Queries will be generated to retrieve those information from the databases. Okay, fine guys. Now, what is a SQL injection vulnerability? So guys, the definition OWASP top 10 definition says is injection flaws occurs when untrusted user supplied data is sent to an interpreter as part of commander or a particular query. So using this, attacker can trick the interpreter into executing unintended commands via supplying specially crafted data. Huh? So guys, if you want to learn or if you want to understand any one particular vulnerability, so for that purpose, we need to understand the definition of the vulnerability because the definition itself speaks the problem statement, what happens with that vulnerability, why application was vulnerable to this particular attack, so what happens with that vulnerability and how to fix that vulnerability. So all these things, definition will speak all these things. Okay, now try to understand. This occurs when in untrusted user supplied data is sent to an interpreter as part of command or query. Here you need to understand application is accepting some untrusted data from the user. Untrusted data, nothing but some malicious payloads or malicious SQL queries or commands. Okay, and that particular untrusted data is passed to an interpreter. Okay, so guys, interpreters or compilers, they just used to convert the high level language to machine readable language, like human readable language to machine readable language. So whatever you see in the application when you open in the browser, that is a high level language, that is for our understanding. But then uh, servers will not, machines will not, servers or machines will not understand this language. So the input has to be converted into zeros and ones, so then only the machine will understand. So human readable language will be converted to the machine readable language using the interpreters and compilers. So this untrusted user supplied data is passed to an interpreter as part of command or query. So user supplied untrusted data is been sent to an interpreter as a command or query. So guys, first thing, whenever you are giving any input, let's say you are giving, you're trying to authenticating into the application, you are providing username and passwords. Okay, the username and password needs to be considered as a text or a string. Instead of that, if application accepts any commands or queries, okay, if application considered the user input as a command or query, so that can lead to SQL injection vulnerability. Okay, so what happens using a SQL injection vulnerability? So what are the consequences? So using a SQL injection vulnerability, authentication bypass can happen. Okay, an attacker can gain administrative privileges into the account, and moreover, he can gain access to the database, and attacker can control the entire database. So entire database can be compromised using SQL injection vulnerability. So that's it guys, we have learned about SQL injection and what are the impact of the SQL injection. Now, where to test for SQL injections? Now you want to verify, you have been given an application to test for, to perform secure testing. Now you have to verify whether application is vulnerable to SQL injection or not. So where you will test? Obviously not all the places are feasible for performing this kind of SQL injection vulnerabilities. So you need to check only those places applications are interacting with the databases. Only places where application is interacting with the database, those places are our attack vectors. So we have to check only in those places, like login page, application will interact with the database. Profile update page, application will interact. Password page change, so application will interact with the database. So any place where you see during the authentication, profile updation page, password change page, whenever you are creating something, whenever you're deleting, editing, updating, this kind of actions you are performing, so in all these places will interact with the database. So those are the places we need to check for cross-scripting vulnerability. First of all, we have to identify the places where application is interacting with the database. So next, we know where to test, but then you also know how to test. So what is the process to test for SQL injection vulnerability? How we will verify application is vulnerable or not? So how to test is also very important. Now let's check this. Okay, let's check this, how to test for SQL injection vulnerability. Let me open one demo.sql.net. It's a vulnerable application, so you can test these applications. You don't have any restrictions in working this application. So ideally there is a login page. I will just give an admin and admin. There's a credentials are default credentials. That moment I give the credentials, I've been provided access to this admin account. Okay, since I know the username and the passwords I have provided to authenticate. Now let's assume I don't know the username and the passwords. I have to verify the SQL injection vulnerability now. So to check for SQL injection vulnerability, the simple and the basic payload is single quote. By just using this simple payload, you can make sure whether you can verify whether application is vulnerable or not. So I just give single quote in the username and the same single quote in the password and try to log in. See, the moment I hit the login button, I have received some database related error message like OLEDB exception kind of error message. So if you see this kind of database related exception error message, it means that application is vulnerable to SQL injection. So guys, please make sure not all the error messages leads to process SQL injection vulnerability. Only those error message that has database related exception errors. So those error messages are vulnerable to SQL injection. So the moment you see OLEDB exception or Microsoft OLEDB exception, or in case of Oracle database, it's a ORA1234 exception kind of error message. This kind of detailed database related error message says that application is vulnerable to SQL injection. Okay. Now we know that application is vulnerable to SQL injection. So I want to further penetrate. Okay, I want to further penetrate either to bypass the authentication. So SQL injection, we can bypass the authentication, or you can query the database to retrieve some sensitive information. Two things, right? Now here I want to bypass the authentication. So how we can bypass the authentication? One more simple payload like single quote or one is equal to one hyphen hyphen is a username I'm giving here. This is one payload and some random password I'm giving. I'm trying to log in and see what just happened. See, I just give single quote or one is quote and hyphen hyphen, but then I could able to get admin user access. I haven't provided any username and passwords. I don't know the username and passwords here. I just gave some single quote or one is quote and hyphen hyphen statement. In result, I got access to the admin user account. So guys, let's try to understand what just happened over here. See, guys, whenever you are providing the username and password, an SQL query will generate something like this. Okay, query will look like this, like select star from user where username is equal to request that username and password is equal to request that password. This kind of SQL queries will generate at the backend whenever you are trying to provide username and password. Now in request that username, I just gave the username as admin, okay, and password and it's admin. And now the query will be select star from user where username is equal to admin and password is equal to admin. This query reaches the database verify the credentials, and if the credentials are matching, then user will be provided access. Now I just gave this particular payload. So instead of username, I just gave single quote or 1 is equal to 1 hyphen hyphen. So using this, I could able to get admin user access. So what's happening? What is wrong with this payload? Let's try to understand this payload, friends. So this is a Boolean statement. It's nothing but 1 is equal to 1 is a true statement. Okay. Now, what is this single quote means? This particular single quote is a string concatenator. This particular payload will go and concatenate or concatenate to this particular SQL query. Okay, and hyphen hyphen is called as string terminator, or it can also be called as comment field. So using this hyphen hyphen or minus minus characters, we can comment whatever comes after that particular after this particular hyphen hyphen or minus minus comment symbols. So everything will be considered as a comment. Now the query will look like select star from user, where username is equal to this thing, and password is everything is commented. Once it is commented, it will not be validated. Okay. Now you see, query will look like this. So database will read this query. So looking at 1 is equal to 1, this kind of Boolean statement. So since it's a true statement, so database and verify this as a true statement. 1 is equal to 1 is equal to 1 is equal to 1 is a true. So and the request is a true. For every correct request, there should be a response. So database verifying this 1 is equal to 1 true statement Boolean statement. In return, it has to provide some response to the user for a correct request. Okay, the statement is correct. We have to get some response. So ultimately, database will provide access to first record of the user. Okay, attacker will get access to first record of the particular database. Okay, now first record in the database will be of admin account. So this is how we are able to get access to admin account by just using this simple single quote or 1 is equal to hyphen hyphen SQL payload. Okay, we just give 1 is equal to 1, we got first record of the database. So that doesn't mean if you give 2 is equal to 2, we'll get the second record of the database. So we just giving a true statement. Either it can be 1 is equal to 1, a is equal to a, x is equal to x, anything you can give. It should be a true statement. For true statement, there should be a response. Database is providing, retrieving the first record of the database and providing access to the user, and he's getting authenticated as a admin user. So this is how SQL injection payloads will work. Okay guys, so now we could able to perfectly authenticate into the application. Okay, using this particular payload, we are able to authenticate into the application. Apart from this, what else can be done? What else can be done using the SQL injection vulnerability? We can bypass the authentication, and moreover, we can query the database to retrieve some sensitive information. We already read this, boss. Let's check. Okay, once again, what are the impacts like? We are able to give some administrative privileges, and we can query the database using some specially crafted SQL queries. Now, let's try to query the database and retrieve some more information. So I'm just navigating to view recent transaction. Let me try to retrieve some transactions that has took place in between these dates. Okay, I just provided I want a transaction that has occurred in between these dates. Okay, so there are no transactions. Okay, now let's check whether the application is vulnerable to SQL injection or not by using simple single quote submit. Yeah, you see some OLEDB exception error, database related error, exception errors means application is vulnerable. Now I want to retrieve more information. Okay, for that purpose I am going to use two basic SQL commands like order by command and union select command. Using order by command, we can retrieve the number of columns, or we can come to a conclusion how many columns are there in a particular table in the database. So number of columns can be verified using simple order by command. So order by 2 hyphen hyphen. So here I am just assuming that there are two columns in the table. Okay, I'm just assuming. Let me submit that. You won't see anything. Some information has been retrieved, so we have to keep on increase the number until you see an error message. Okay, order by 5. You see there is an error message. Okay, now let me work out with order by 4. No error message. See, if you are giving order by 5, there is an error message. There, if you are providing order by 4, there is no error message. Nothing but there are 4 columns in the table. Now we know that there are 4 columns. Further, we have to use further SQL query, SQL commands to retrieve the vulnerable columns. You know that there are 4 columns. Now I just want to retrieve vulnerable columns. Okay, so union select. For that I'll use union select 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4 from users table. Let's assume from users table I just want to verify the vulnerable columns. You see, the moment I gave this particular union select payload and submit the button, these numbers appeared here. Earlier these numbers were not there. Okay, let us verify once again. You see, 1 2 3 4 numbers are not visible here. Now I just give from users. The moment I submit, you will see 1 2 3 4. Okay, this nothing but all the 4 columns are vulnerable. We can use all these 4 columns to interact with the database to retrieve sensitive information within the database. So if only column 2 and 3 are vulnerable, you will only see column 2 and column 3. This column 1 and column 4, these numbers you won't see these two numbers. You will see only 2 and 3. If that means column second, column third are vulnerable. Okay, okay, that's okay. What happens? We know that there are 3 columns in a table, and with sorry, there are 4 columns in the table, and all the 4 columns are vulnerable. Now what can be done? So now just try to retrieve more information. So we are querying the users table. So users tables will have user related information. So like username, I just want to retrieve the username. So within the one, instead of the one, I just removed one and just entered username. So let me submit. Okay, what just happened? You see, we have retrieved the usernames admin, SQL, Jasmine. These usernames has been retrieved. Earlier, this information is not there. Okay, users table, usernames are there. Okay, what else we can expect to have in the users table? Obviously, password. Okay, now just see, guys, there are no passwords over here. Okay, now let us submit this and see. You see, now you can see passwords over here. So this is how we can craft the as many SQL queries, okay, based on the knowledge or a command we have on writing the SQL queries. So using that, we can retrieve so much of sensitive information from the database. We can completely control or handle the database. You can completely bring the database under our control. So we can do anything. We can create the records, we can edit the users. Okay, we can delete the users, we can create the users, anything can be done. So if application is vulnerable to SQL injection, attacker can completely take control of the databases. Okay, so guys, this is about SQL injection vulnerability. So you know that application is vulnerable to SQL injection by just using this particular single quote payload. Okay, you just give single quote payload over here. Okay, and you are seeing database related error message. You came to know SQL injection application is vulnerable to SQL injection, but then further you are unable to penetrate into the application. You are not in a position to retrieve the column names, or you are not in to retrieve any sensitive information from the database. So what we have to do? So the moment you see this error message, it's confirm this kind of database related error message. It's confirmed application is vulnerable to SQL injection. So further, if you're not able to penetrate, so you need not to bother. Just try to create the take a screenshot of this and try to report. So whenever tomorrow if someone asks you to, if your organization has gave you an application to assess and you are checking for SQL injections, you can simply provide this particular screenshot and say application is vulnerable. It is not mandatory to penetrate further and retrieve the database related information. See, I am not in a position to retrieve the information, or you are not in a position to retrieve the information, but then it doesn't mean application is not vulnerable. This error message itself is a proof of concept. Okay, we can provide this error message and tell the developers application is vulnerable to SQL injection. We have to fix that. Okay, this is about SQL injection vulnerability. Further, we have tools like SQL map kind of the tools are there. Okay, using the tools, if your organization is allowing you to make use of those tools, you can use those tools to retrieve more information. Now, let me show you a quick example of how to run the SQL map. So I already downloaded SQL map in my machine. Just try to navigate to that particular folder. Okay, and try to enter sqlmap.py, and minus u is the URL. We have to provide the vulnerable URL. Okay, so similar to demo.sfi.net, we have one more application that is vulnerable to SQL injection. I know this application is vulnerable to SQL injection, but then I'm not in a position to retrieve much information. So I'm just making the use of tools like SQL map. Just copy this, okay, and paste this particular information. And I just want to retrieve the table names, okay, table table names from this particular application, from the particular database. Okay, SQL map followed by minus u is the URL and followed by the URL, and hyphen hyphen table means I want to retrieve table information from this database. What happened? Something went wrong. Let me try once again. So let me remove this and see. Uh, 1 second, guys. Minus u URL followed by within the single quotes. Yes, yeah. You see, it gave us some results. The parameter artist get, okay, artist get parameter seems to be vulnerable. Okay, so you see in the application I just gave this URL, this particular artist, it's a get request. It seems to be vulnerable to SQL injection, and the payload they have used is artist is equal to 1 and some number is equal to number, some boolean statement, 1 is equal to 1 or 2 is equal to true. And also this is that application is vulnerable to time-based blind SQL injection and sleep. So this sleep commands tell the particular server to hold the response for the next 5 seconds. If it is 5, it will hold the response for 5 seconds. If it is 10, it will hold the response for 10 seconds, and some union query kind of the thing. So this is how tools can be used. Okay. Um by making use of this, we can retrieve, we can try to query to retrieve more information of this particular vulnerable application. But then not many organizations will allow us to install this kind of tools. Okay, we need to go through a rigorous exception approval process to get it installed if you're talking about the multinational organizations. So that is the reason why it is always best, let's try to understand what is the vulnerability is all about, and going through manual ethical hacking process is the best approach. So even if you don't have any tools, you should be in a position to at least make sure that application is vulnerable or not. Okay, so now we know that we know what is the SQL injection vulnerability. Okay, what are the consequences and where to test. Okay, on all the places where application is interacting with the database and how to test, we have studied about these things. Okay, now most important thing is fix. You know, application is vulnerable, so you will create a report stating that in this particular location application is vulnerable. Okay, and you need to provide the recommendation plan. Okay, you need to help the developer make him understand what the vulnerability is all about. Apart from that, you need to tell them what this went wrong and we have to fix this vulnerability, and for that purpose you have to follow this step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of the guidelines. So here, what are the countermeasures or recommendations, remedy, fix? All are the same for SQL injection vulnerability. First thing is, user supplied untrusted data should not be accepted. So it has to be validated. So strong input validation and whitelist validation has to be used. Apart from that, we have to use parameters with stored procedures. So these parameters with stored procedures will help the applications to protect from will help the application to be safe. It will protect the application from being vulnerable to SQL injections. So in ASP.NET we call it as parameterized queries, and in Java we call it as prepared statements. So guys, this is about in detail about SQL injection vulnerability. Thanks for watching for this video. Good day.